Welcome back. We are now on the third and final part of our Understanding Self-Defense Techniques video series. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. I hope you've gotten a lot out of it. Throughout this series, we've looked at how self-defense techniques serve as a vehicle to extract the concepts. And really, if there's only one lesson you take from this series, let it be this: seek to understand the concepts. Because it's only by understanding the concepts behind the system that you can achieve mastery over the system. And as you explore your self-defense techniques and you pull lessons out of them, also try to understand the versatility of those lessons. And that's going to take us into the last idea, the last concept I want to share with you today. And it's called the master key concept. And this is an important concept. Now, a master key, of course, is a key that can unlock multiple doors. And as we explore our techniques and pull apart the lessons that are contained within them, we should try to understand how many doors they can unlock. How many different situations can they be applied to? Now, there's different master keys that we can discuss. There's master key basics, which is not the most profound idea. I'm sure you're probably already familiar that many of your individual movements can be applied to several different situations. So we're not going to spend too much time on that. But we should also take note that while many of the basics are master key basics, there are those specialized movements that can only be applied to very specific situations. And although in general it's much better to have a few moves that you can apply to many situations rather than to have many moves that you can only apply to a few situations, there are those few situations that require very specialized moves. So we should take note of those movements and spend a little time developing skill with those as well. Now, there's also master key movements that we can look at, or master key patterns. These are combinations that exist within the technique, or even geometrical patterns that exist within the technique. And you've probably already noticed in just the 4 techniques that we've looked at that there are certain movements that appear in multiple techniques. And as you go further with your training, you'll see that there are certain movements and patterns that occur again and again in your self-defense techniques and even in your forms. And if that's the case, those are your master key movements. And if they're appearing again and again, they're probably pretty important. So take note of those movements and spend a little extra time developing skill with them. And lastly, we're going to look at master key techniques. This is the idea that we can take techniques that we've learned, and we're going to do this today, and we can apply them to different situations. And this is all done in the ideal phase. This is from a theoretical perspective. The objective is not to master a technique and be able to use it in combat. The objective is to master an understanding of the lessons of the technique. So by taking a technique, understanding it as is, exploring it in the ideal phase, the traditional approach, and then exploring the what-if phase, looking at the different variables. Well, once we understand the technique as it was taught, and we've developed skill with it, now we should try to see what other situations it can be applied to. And this is all done going through the 3-phase concept all over again. Look at it in the ideal phase as you apply it to a different situation, and then you most certainly have to move beyond that. And this oftentimes people will neglect just because you've already explored the what-ifs in the traditional execution of the technique. Well, now that you've applied the technique to a new situation, you've changed the variables. So be sure to explore the what-if phase in the new situation as well. So this is the concept. It's a pretty powerful one. This is just the beginning. When you understand the formulation process and you apply this, the formulation process to this whole concept, then you start to see how many times your advanced techniques are reformulated versions of fundamental techniques that you learn early on. But we're going to take this as is today. We're not going to really reformulate too much. And we're going to use this concept, and we're going to explore the techniques that I've already shared with you in parts 1 and part 2. And then I have one final technique I'm going to share with you in this part of the series. It's one of the most basic techniques that we teach. This is actually, it's a little more advanced, but it's the first technique, a different variation of the first technique that we teach to our students. And it's a pretty versatile technique at that. So what I want to do now, we're going to join Rick, and we're going to apply this concept to our techniques, and we're going to see what we can come up with.
The first thing, I'm not going to spend much time on this. As I said, it's pretty straightforward, but master key basics. We can use our inward block. He's grabbing me here, and I can use my inward block to inflict injury to his arm. And yet again, we see it in 2 combination, throw a roundhouse punch. I'm using an inward block here to inflict injury again. So look at your movements and understand how you can adapt them in different situations. That's all. Basics, that's pretty simple. The next level though, master key movements, or the patterns, that's pretty important. It's also pretty straightforward, but pretty darn important. In Sword of Destruction, we'll start with delayed sword again. In delayed sword, we have an inward block, we have a kick, and then an outward strike. It's slightly downward, but it's still an outward movement. In 2 combination, which you just saw, we have inward to outward. This inward to outward combination, it's a very important foundational movement of the system. Spend time working on it. I haven't seen a system yet that doesn't have some inward block, outward strike combination in it. And of course, if we have the inward to outward, we have throw your punch. We see it in Sword of Destruction, and we see it in Shielding Hammer, the outward to inward combination. And both of those movements work well to support each other. There's a nice connection between them. I can segue from one to the other. He might throw a roundhouse punch and I do my outward movement, and then he throws another roundhouse punch and I move back to an inward movement. So here we went outward to inward, and then I can go back to outward and move. If I started with Shielding Hammer, I might move to 2 combination and vice versa. We already explored that, but see how the movements, see the connections between the movements is equally as important as understanding that the movements recur throughout the system. Now, how can we adapt different techniques to different situations? We're going to look at an attack. We'll switch back for this. We're looking at an attack, not the most typical attack. This is a wrist grab. So he's going to grab a hold, direct grab. And maybe we end up in this situation, things are getting escalated, and I turn to walk away, he grabs a hold of me. Or even better yet, if he's throwing a punch, I might end up grabbing him as he's punching. Now we have a wrist grab. So different ways you can end up in this situation. It's probably not that you're just standing around and he gets angry and grabs you by the wrist, but that's where we're going to start for today for the purpose of this video. Let's move this way a little bit. As he grabs a hold, well, I can escape, but look what I did. I pulled his hand towards me, and he still had me by the jacket. So what we can do instead is use our inward block. Let's see if we can adapt 2 combination to a wrist grab. He grabs a hold, I block the arm down, and look how that's starting to break his height. It's going to negate this hand from coming towards me. It might break his height, and it might pull him into my back fist. And of course, I can finish. I can use the technique just the same. Okay? But now you're smarter than that. You know, if that's the base technique, let's move on. Let's move beyond it. What if? What if he grabs a hold? I might be getting ready to escape, but he throws a punch. Now what am I going to use? I can go 1, and I can segue into Shielding Hammer. So we've shown you how 2 different techniques that you have can be adapted to a different situation, a different predicament. And that's just a starting point. I want you to take that idea and go a little further with it. I'm going to share one final technique with you now, which is another very important technique in our system. This is 6 combination in Kempo. It's off of a straight punch. He's going to step in slow though, so I can show you. This is the first lesson. Let's change our angle just a little. He throws his punch. This is the lesson. See, my leg is longer than his arm. To beat action, meet action. As he engages, my leg gets there first and my block is insurance. And now let's just extend the arm and let's look at the block. Here's our movement. 1, 2, it's a palm, shudo, trap. Basic movement. Okay, so off the technique again is this, and then we cross out. Let's adapt this to a different situation. Let's look at the case where things are getting escalated, things are getting heated. It's not physical yet, but it might escalate to that point, so I want to be ready. I want to be prepared. Now, if I throw my hands up on guard, it's definitely going to get physical. So why not gesture? Why not start using my hands? See, that puts me in a defensive posture without looking aggressive. I'm also positioning my feet in a position where I have a better stance without, looking like I'm getting ready to fight. So if I'm gesturing and talking, and maybe this is also rare, but it could happen, he grabs a hold of me to start wrestling with me. Well, now look at this movement. 1, and then 2, and then kick. So we've taken a movement that works off a punch, we've adapted it to a grab. I'll give you one more example here. Let's do a cross grab. We did a direct grab a second ago. Let's do a cross grab. Let's shrink our palm shudo. So we are reformulating it a little, but we're going to shrink it down. It's still there. Palm, now it's a pin. Shudo, reposition, and I'm going to trap, and I'm going to try to snap and break the wrist. And actually, in this position, you can do that really easy. And then I can again kick and cross out. So we've seen 2 applications for 6 combination. I gave you a different application for shielding hammer and 2 combination as well. Take the master key concept as you learn your techniques. Use the 3-phase concept we gave you. Extract the lessons. Start asking what-if questions. Start making connections between the techniques and the movements within the techniques. And then, once you understand the lessons and once you understand the limitations and possibilities of the technique, see how you can adapt it to multiple situations, because that's the ultimate aim. It's to take the lessons of the technique and make them as versatile as possible. So that'll be about it for this course. We do, however, I want to just make you aware, we have a course we are going to be releasing next month. It'll be our first online course on the formulation process, which will go even further in the direction that we've taken things in this course. It's going to show you how to reformulate things and further understand the versatility of your movements and of your techniques. So as we make that available, we're actually finished filming that course now. We're just kind of working on packaging everything together. Once that's available, I'll let you guys know. Again, I want to say thanks for watching the series. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was really a pleasure putting it together for you, and I hope when we release our next course, you'll be a part of it. So thanks for watching. Take care.